It started on a Tuesday. The kind that felt like a leftover day, too quiet, too pale. I was sitting in the corner of the small cafe across from the courthouse, pretending to read something on my phone while my coffee went cold. She came in like she'd been here before, not often, but enough to know where the line formed and which table got the best light. Her hair was tied back, a few loose strands falling the way soft things fall when they stop fighting gravity. She wore no jewelry, except a thin band on her right hand. The barista smiled at her. "The usual?" She nodded. Her voice was calm. "If it still remembers me." It was such a strange sentence, like she was talking to a memory, not a drink. When she passed my table, her perfume, something faint, like jasmine that had almost forgotten how to be sweet, lingered just long enough to make me look up. She caught me looking. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just saw me. I looked back down at my screen, where a half-typed message to someone named Sarah still sat in the text bar. "We should catch up sometime," I'd written 2 weeks ago. The cursor blinked like it was judging me. The woman took the table beside mine. She didn't pull out her phone. Didn't check the time. Just stared out the window at the gray sky. People like that always caught my attention, the ones who weren't rushing anywhere. When the barista called her name, I heard it, Elena. It suited her. She reached for her coffee, then paused. I don't know why I noticed the small things, the way her fingers trembled just once before steadying, or how she pressed her thumb against the rim of the cup before taking a sip, as if to test its warmth. Something about that tiny gesture made my chest tighten. The cafe filled with low conversation and the hiss of milk steaming. She glanced my way again, this time with the faintest trace of a smile, polite, distant, but not cold. "Do you come here a lot?" I asked, immediately regretting how textbook that sounded. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. "Only on Tuesdays." "Why Tuesdays?" "Court days," she said simply, then took another sip. I didn't ask more. The way she said it, flat, tired, told me the rest wasn't meant for strangers. Still, I found myself folding the paper napkin in front of me into smaller and smaller squares, just to have something to do. When she got up to leave, she set her empty cup down with a soft clink. Then she paused, hand halfway to her bag. "You're here every Tuesday too," she said. Not a question. "Yeah. My uncle's hearings." I lied, though I wasn't sure why. She nodded once. "Then I'll see you next Tuesday." She walked out before I could answer. Through the window, I watched her cross the street, the wind catching her coat, the faint echo of heels against pavement. For some reason, I wanted to follow her, just to know what kind of silence she carried when no one was watching. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for not asking." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Outside, it started to rain. I didn't plan to see her again. But when Tuesday came, I found myself at the same cafe before I even thought about it. Same table, same cup, same weak excuse to be there. She arrived late this time, hair slightly wet from the drizzle, a faint trace of exhaustion around her eyes. She smiled when she spotted me, the kind of quiet, knowing smile that made it feel like we were sharing a secret no one else noticed. "You were early," she said, setting her coat on the chair opposite mine. "Habit," I said. "I hate missing the good seats." She gave a soft laugh, the kind that sounds surprised to exist. For a while, we sat in that easy silence. The hum of the espresso machine filled the gaps. When her phone buzzed, she turned it face down without looking. "You ever do that?" she asked. "Ignore the world for 10 minutes?" "All the time," I said. "But the world usually wins." Her eyes flicked toward me, something gentle, almost sad, resting behind the look. Then, without prompting, she said, "My ex-husband's hearing got postponed." Again. I didn't ask what for. The tone said enough, disappointment laced with something heavier, like resignation. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She shrugged. "Don't be. It's just tiring, being the story everyone thinks they already know." That line stayed in my head longer than I expected. She stirred her tea slowly, the spoon clinking in a rhythm that almost sounded like hesitation. Then she looked up. How old are you? 24, I said, though I felt younger under her gaze. 24, she repeated softly, as if trying to picture her own youth from that distance. My daughter's 22. The words hung between us, not warning, not boundary, just fact. I felt the air change. Not colder but charged. Like if I moved too quickly, I'd break something fragile. She noticed my silence and smiled, a small, careful thing. You don't have to look so alarmed. I'm not your mother. I didn't think you were, I said too quickly. We both laughed, quietly, awkwardly. But the sound eased something. After that, she helped me with the sugar packets that had spilled across the table, her fingers brushing mine, brief, accidental, but enough to make my pulse catch. Neither of us mentioned it. When she stood to leave, she rested her hand on the back of my chair, just for a second. A steadying gesture, or maybe reassurance. I don't know why that moment stayed with me, I thought later, watching her walk away again. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. By the third Tuesday, it wasn't coincidence anymore. I told myself it was habit, the coffee, the quiet, but I checked the door too often for it to be that simple. When she walked in, I noticed everything, the faint smudge of lipstick on her cup, the way she rolled her sleeves just past her wrists, the small wince when the chair scraped against the floor. Little, ordinary things. All the things you notice when you care. She didn't look at me right away. Ordered her drink, stood by the counter, phone in hand, unread messages lighting the screen. When she finally came over, she hesitated before sitting. I shouldn't, she said softly. Then sat anyway. I smiled. Habit? Something like that. We talked, about nothing at first. The rain, the bad coffee, the lawyer who never called back. But every pause felt weighted. Every silence, deliberate. At one point, she reached for the sugar, her hand brushing mine again. Neither of us pulled away this time. I wanted to ask her something real. But before I could, the bell above the door rang. A man in a suit entered, older, familiar to her by the way her face tightened. He spotted her immediately. Elena, he said too loudly for a cafe that small. You missed the meeting. Her posture changed. Stiff, professional. I told them I wasn't coming. He looked at me then, quick assessment, quiet judgment. Ah. I see. It wasn't what he said. It was what he meant. After he left, she stared at her untouched drink. That was my ex's lawyer, she murmured. He thinks I'm lost. You don't look lost, I said. She smiled without looking up. You're kind. But you don't know me. I'm trying to. That made her glance up, brief, sharp, almost scared. Then softer. You shouldn't. She said it like a warning, but her hand stayed close to mine on the table. Our fingers almost touched again, almost, until she pulled hers back to her lap, folding them tightly. We sat in silence. The clock ticked too loudly. She exhaled slowly. You remind me of someone I used to believe in. And I didn't know what to do with that. When she stood to leave, I rose too, out of habit or instinct. At the door, she paused, half-turned. Her eyes held something I couldn't name, longing, fear, maybe both. Then she leaned in, not enough for contact, just close enough that I could feel her breath, faint and warm. If you wait for next Tuesday, she whispered, make sure you know why. She left before I could answer. And I stood there, heart caught somewhere between hope and hesitation, realizing she already knew why. It was Thursday this time. Not Tuesday. That's how I knew something had changed. She texted me the night before. Just coffee. Not court. No emoji. No explanation. Just that. We met at the park near the river. Early evening. The kind of hour where everything looks softer than it feels. She was sitting on a bench, coat folded beside her, eyes on the water like it was saying something only she could hear. I sat down slowly, keeping a respectful space between us. You almost didn't come, she said without looking at me. I thought maybe I shouldn't. And yet. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes after too much thinking. For a while neither of us spoke. A jogger passed, leaves crunched underfoot, the city murmured in the background. I could feel her restlessness, the kind that doesn't come from movement, but from holding too much in. Finally she said, "You know what's strange? People think divorce frees you. But it doesn't. It just rearranges your loneliness." I didn't have words for that. Only the ache of recognizing it. She turned to me then. "You shouldn't keep showing up for someone who's already unraveling. Maybe I'm unraveling too." That made her laugh, soft, brittle, like she didn't expect it to hurt. I looked at her, really looked, and something in me cracked a little. The curve of her jaw, the small line between her brows, the steadiness she faked so well. "You don't have to hold everything together," I said quietly. "Who else will?" she whispered back. Her eyes met mine, steady, searching. And for the first time, there wasn't distance. Just exhaustion, and warmth, and something dangerously close to need. I wanted to touch her hand, to tell her I understood, but my throat tightened. Instead, I said, "You could let someone help." She looked away, shaking her head. "You're kind. Too kind. You remind me of a part of myself I had to kill off a long time ago." Her voice wavered on kill. She closed her eyes, exhaled. "I can't," she started, then stopped. I waited. "I can't do this again," she said finally. "The hope part. The waiting for texts part. The wondering if I am being seen part." She looked at me then, and I saw it, fear, wanting, guilt, all tangled in one long silence. "I don't want to be something you regret," I said. Her fingers tightened around the bench edge, knuckles pale. "What if you already are?" The air went still. Even the river sounded quieter. And just when I thought she might reach for me, or maybe I for her, she stood up, slowly, like someone pulling themselves back from the edge of a dream. "Don't wait for me," she said. But her voice didn't sound sure. She turned to leave, stopped halfway. Looked back. Then asked, barely above a whisper, "Would you?" The cafe felt different without her. Not emptier, just rearranged, like someone had quietly moved the furniture in my life while I wasn't looking. For 3 weeks, I went anyway. Same corner table. Same bitter coffee. The same habit of looking up every time the bell over the door rang, just in case. She didn't come. Then one morning, the barista slid a folded piece of paper across the counter. "She asked me to give you this if you showed up." My hands hesitated before taking it. It wasn't a letter, just a torn receipt, her handwriting small and deliberate. "You were right. It's easier to disappear when someone finally notices you." That was all. No signature, but I didn't need one. I read it twice. Then a third time. Each word sank like a pebble into still water. I went to the park that evening, our bench by the river. The light was pale, the air heavy with things unsaid. I sat there until dusk, half hoping she'd appear beside me again. She didn't. The next day, I saw her by accident. Not at the cafe, not at the courthouse, at a bookstore downtown. She was with a man. Older, expensively tired, with the kind of posture that comes from getting what he wants too often. Her ex, I guessed. He said something that made her laugh, soft, uncertain. She touched his arm when they left. Reflex, not affection. But it still hit me harder than it should have. I didn't call out to her. Didn't move. Just watched her leave, the same way you watch a door close slowly, knowing you could still stop it, but not sure you should. That night, I started to write her a message. "I saw you today." Deleted it. "You don't owe me an explanation." Deleted that too. What stayed on the screen, for longer than it should have, was just one line, "Are you okay?" I didn't send it. I don't know if I was afraid of the answer, or of being the reason she'd have to lie. Days passed like static. I stopped going to the cafe. Started drinking coffee at home, where no one asked about missing faces. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at the clock around noon, the time she'd usually arrive. The habit had outlived the reason. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The following Tuesday, I walked by the cafe but didn't go in. Through the window, I saw her table, empty, clean, waiting. The chair across from it stayed pulled out, just slightly. Like someone had left in a hurry, but meant to come back. It was late evening when I finally saw her again. Not in the cafe. Not at the courthouse. At her doorstep. I hadn't planned to be there. I'd walked past her street more times than I'd admit, half hoping for coincidence, half dreading it. That night, it was raining, light but steady. The kind of rain that blurs the edges of everything, thoughts, plans, excuses. She opened the door before I could knock. Maybe she'd heard the gravel under my shoes. Maybe she just knew. For a moment, we just stood there, the rain filling the silence between us. "You're soaked," she said softly. "I know." Her tone wasn't surprise. More like resignation, or maybe relief. She stepped aside. "You might as well come in." Her house was small, quiet, warm in the way lived-in spaces are. A half-read book on the counter. A mug with lipstick on the rim. The soft hum of an old fridge. She handed me a towel. I took it, but neither of us moved much after that. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "I know." She looked at me for a long time, then sighed, the kind of sigh that lets something go but not all the way. "You saw me with him." I nodded. "He's not back," she said, reading the question I didn't ask. "He just thinks he can be." "And can he?" She hesitated. "No. But I wish I didn't have to keep saying no." I stepped closer, just enough to see the small tremor in her hands. "You don't owe anyone an explanation, Elena." Her eyes lifted to mine, tired, open, searching. "Not even you?" That stopped me. For a long moment, there was no sound except the rain tapping against the window. I could feel every word we hadn't said pressing against the air between us. "I don't want to be another person who needs something from you," I said finally. "But I need you to know I didn't just show up for coffee." Her breath caught. "Then what did you show up for?" I swallowed. "For the way you look when you're trying not to cry. For the silence that feels like it's talking. For you." She looked at me, and something inside her seemed to waver. The quiet breaking point that comes right before someone lets themselves believe. She took a small step closer, her voice almost a whisper. "You shouldn't say things like that." I already did. For a second she closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet, not from the rain. She reached out, touched my sleeve lightly. "You'll catch a cold." That was her way of saying thank you. I nodded. "I know." We stood there, two people who finally stopped running from the same truth. And then she smiled. Just once. Small, real enough. "Okay," she said. "It's strange how peace doesn't announce itself. It just arrives one morning, quiet, unnoticed, like sunlight slipping through blinds that used to stay closed." It's been 6 months since that night at her doorstep. The rain's a memory now, but sometimes, when it falls just right against my window, I still hear her voice saying, "Okay." We never talked about what came after. We just lived it. Now, we meet most mornings at the same cafe, the one that used to hold so many silences between us. Only it's different now. She orders black tea instead of coffee. I've stopped pretending to like the bitter stuff and switched to what she calls grown-up chocolate, hot cocoa. The barista doesn't even ask our names anymore. She just nods, smiling, when she sees us walk in together. At 8:47 a.m., always 8:47, she'll glance out the window, the same way she used to when waiting for her court hearings to end. Now she does it out of habit, not hope. Sometimes we still sit by the river. The bench hasn't changed, chipped paint, faint graffiti, our reflection rippling in the water. But the silence between us has. It's lighter now. Easier. Last week, I caught her watching me as I spoke about something ordinary, rent, grocery prices, my new job. She smiled that small, private smile of hers. You talk more now, she said. I guess I stopped saving words for later, I replied. She reached for my hand, not tentative this time, just natural. Familiar. The kind of touch that feels like home, not electricity. We don't say I love you. We don't need to. It lives quietly in the way she warms my hands with her cup when mine are cold. In the way I save her the seat by the window every Tuesday, even though we now come every day. Sometimes she still disappears into thought, long pauses, distant eyes. I've learned not to fill them. She always comes back. And when she does, she squeezes my hand once, like a promise. People still whisper sometimes, about the age difference, the history, the timing. But none of it matters. Not really. We've both been broken before, just in different decades. What we found wasn't romance. It was recognition. Today, as we leave the cafe, she nudges my arm. You still fold your napkin the same way, she says with a faint grin. You still notice, I say. She glances up at me. Always did. We walk to the river. The light catches the water just right, soft, silver, like forgiveness in motion. She sits on the bench, and I sit beside her. For a long while, we just watch the current move, slow, certain, unstoppable. Then she says, This feels like the ending, doesn't it? I nod. Yeah. But the good kind. She smiles, that same quiet, devastating smile. Finally. Clapperboard, did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? Tell me in the comments. Your next favorite story might begin with a silence.